This video is brought to you by Surfshark. Stick around to hear more about the discount and special offer they are providing to the entire upper echelon community. Okay, today's video has mixed emotions. On the one hand, I, along with quite a few other crypto analysts and social media users, get to say, we were right all along. The pitfalls of Celsius have begun to metastasize, landing us in a situation where they have locked down all transfers and withdrawals, thereby holding their community hostage as they navigate what appears to be a liquidity crisis. On the other hand, I am watching people lose their life savings, or at the very least, be denied access to those savings, which is not a good feeling regardless of how insufferable and idiotic I find the Celsius community to actually be. This is a topic I have covered for months. It started with some speculation and a look at the shady affiliations for some of their executive team. My prior video has a lot more detail on those. Then it became a cease and desist letter from Celsius to me as they started to encounter serious problems. And eventually, I doubled down with factual coverage of the company, from lapsed reporting on asset losses to wallet connections leading back to rug pulls, among other suspect findings. But all of that would pale in comparison to what they have now done, freezing all customer assets on their platform. You can still deposit money, mind you, but you cannot transfer between wallets, you cannot withdraw especially, and there is no timeline as of yet on when this will be reversed. I told you so is such an appealing thing to say right up until you actually get to say it. In theory, it was going to be a delicious moment for me, but it's not. Celsius customers are panicked, fearful, and many of them are facing financial ruin because the not a bank entity that operates exactly like a bank with none of the relative financial or government-backed security is, go fucking figure, encountering severe problems. Today, I want to look at what has happened, why it has happened, and then do a small bit of speculation on what might happen going forward. Before really diving in, however, I want to say something that I honestly never thought I would even have the option of saying. After the news hit that Celsius had frozen all withdrawals from the platform, I began to receive messages. These were messages from channel viewers, patrons, community members, even prior members of my gaming squads or guilds, and they all had a very similar theme. Something like this. After the coverage, I withdrew some or all of my money in Celsius. I tried to get a question answered and got blocked, or I lost confidence when they failed to address any of the valid concerns, or I had a gut feeling even, you name it. Because of that move, whether a day, a week, or a month before the freeze, I still have access to my money. For some, it's their life savings, and roughly adding up the totals from these messages that I have received currently, people have managed to take personal control of over $1 million aggregate, which would otherwise have been frozen, unreachable, and locked down by a struggling company with a horrifying track record of transparency. Working directly with Dirty Bubble Media, the original source to expose a great deal of the blockchain records, which now give greater context on why and how these events have taken place, we were able to educate a, frankly, shocking number of people who have now avoided this crisis entirely. It's their prerogative whether or not to utilize Celsius again once the dice have fallen, whenever they happen to fall, but they are not prisoners of this financial entity right now because they took real ownership of their own assets before the music stopped. I am immensely proud of that. Dirty Bubble Media should be immensely proud of that. And that kind of message serves to reaffirm why I post the type of content I now do. Basically, through the good and bad times, this kind of realization and affirmation that the coverage has directly helped people is reassuring and much appreciated. Alright, before going further, I have to once again discuss the concept of data protection, because in the modern online world, it is anything but a guarantee. If you want to have your data spread to the corners of the earth for monetizable and even nefarious purposes at times, be my guest, but for anyone who doesn't want that, Surfshark is the answer. Surfshark is a VPN with a number of separate uses. One, it can bypass regional censorship simply by flipping your geographic location. On top of that, it will help you bypass region-specific licensing contracts, which will mean access to a larger amount of online video content for streaming sites like Netflix, and even more, you can protect yourself from the data harvesting tactics, obviously, of technology companies all around the world. These are just a few of the options when it comes to a VPN, and I'll be the first to say that I use Surfshark for a multitude of purposes when I cover tech-related topics. Protecting my IP, as an example, is no small thing, and it's rather necessary at times. I am happy to say that Surfshark is offering 83% off and 3 full months free if you click the link down below using promo code ECHELON. But also, before exiting here, they are giving away their antivirus service for free during this month in particular, June. Again, that's 83% off and 3 full months free with complimentary antivirus using the link down below and code ECHELON. Big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring the channel. Now on to the more interesting stuff. First of all, the Celsius community is in open revolt. Trust is broken, and when I say broken, I mean shattered the kneecaps with a sledgehammer to a degree where it may well be impossible to ever repair. Celsius pretends that they are not a bank. Their literal slogan is unbank yourself. Cringe. And yet they centralize finance, hold user funds, distribute loans, and then pay interest. In essence, they perform the precise function and operations of a bank, or also kind of a hedge fund. But they don't have government backing, they don't have accountability, and they say we're not a bank, but we do what banks do, so we're better than that. This is obviously a complete farce, but it gets worse. This is a tweet from November of 2019. Quote, "If you don't have free and unlimited access to your own funds, are they really your funds? Unbank yourself with Celsius and join the next generation of financial services. No fees, no penalties, no lockups, just profit." End quote. That was the official Celsius account billing the service as a superior alternative to banking. Even further, one day before the total freeze on asset withdrawals, CEO Alex Mashinsky had this to say in response to what he and his degenerate brain-dead fan community call FUD. Quote, "Mike, do you know even one person who has a problem withdrawing money from Celsius? Why spread FUD and misinformation?" End quote. Roughly 24 hours later, all community members are having trouble withdrawing from Celsius, and everyone has a problem, Alex. Now for the big one. After users began to panic, language was discovered in the Celsius Terms of Service. Quote, "In the event that Celsius becomes bankrupt, enters liquidation, or is otherwise unable to repay its obligations, any eligible digital asset used in the earn service or as collateral under the borrow service may not be recoverable, and you may not have any legal remedies or rights in connection with Celsius's obligations to you other than your rights as a creditor of Celsius under any applicable laws." End quote. That one should hit hard because it exemplifies the real problem and makes the risk really just plain as day. Celsius wants you to stop using banks and trust them. But what happens if a bank goes out of business? Well, I'll tell you what happens, because it's happened before and it will happen inevitably again. People still get their money. FDIC insurance is required for banks to operate. FDIC insurance is a way to provide security to customers, and a traditional bank is certainly prone to its own set of issues. I'm not saying that the central banking industry of at least modern day America is perfect in any sense of the word, but you have a layer of security backed by the government itself that can be relied upon barring some sort of global economic catastrophe so severe that the country itself begins to fail. Nothing is ever 100% secure, but using an FDIC-insured bank, if you choose to use banking services at all, is about as close as you can get. Celsius is basically the opposite. They aren't different when it comes to basic function, they are different when it comes to security. If Celsius goes under or has a severe liquidity issue, go figure, all of their customers stop being customers and become creditors. This means that your money becomes their money. They use your money to pay their debts. They have no insurance, and you get back nothing, because when the market goes up, their business model works fine. But when the market goes down, well, we can all see what just happened. In the time since this total freeze on customer withdrawals, Celsius has issued, count them, one small update. That's it. Here's what it says. Quote, "Celsius Network is working as quickly as possible and will share information as and when it becomes appropriate. Acting in the interest of our community remains our top priority." End quote. There you have it. You get information on what they are doing with your money, if they even have your money anymore, when it's appropriate. Because they decide when you even have access to your money is appropriate or not. They decide what level of access, how you have access, what you hear about that access, and you get nothing. You get no say, no control, no freedom, unbank yourself, no freedom, and no security. Adding this in after, they tweeted again, right, postscript, but this time it was to say, we're not going to do our little regular AMA thing. They normally do this little bullshit where people ask the CEO questions and he usually rudely responds for a few minutes or says something ignorant, but they are canceling outward-facing PR right now, so there have been two statements technically, but one of them was to say, we're not going to give you actual information right now while we have all of your funds locked down in a way that should absolutely not be legal. Here's a fun little quote. From the Celsius homepage, access your coins whenever. Keep them safe forever. And a little further down, I shit you not, swap or withdraw your crypto at any time with no fees. Outstanding. Just really, truly excellent job here at crafting a superior financial system when compared to traditional banking. Great job. Anyway, that is effectively what has happened, but now we need the infinitely more complex explanation of why it has happened. This gets really tricky. For starters, we don't actually know the full answer. We have pieces, tidbits, and speculation, with some proven transactions, of course, and likely theories, but Celsius has not actually been audited or publicly analyzed with in-house data since 2020. Those findings from 2020 were published in 2021, nearly a full year later, or actually probably before that, but that's when at least I found analysis of them. And again, that makes the info completely out of date, but we are still able to learn some very curious things. Here's an example. Compiled by a user named IntelJackal on Twitter, we learned that Celsius has done something very creative with their balance sheet. To understand this, we need to remember that Celsius Network uses a token called CEL, C-E-L, to facilitate their ecosystem of lending. That token was originally dispersed and sold for roughly 30 cents a piece, I think, to the public and institutions, but a tremendous number of those tokens were never sold. Over 100 million of them, well over 100 million actually, were retained by Celsius and housed in the company treasury. This is where it gets tricky, because during 2020, in the very few financial documents we have access to, Celsius can be seen with a $1.5 billion re-evaluation surplus. According to IntelJackal on Twitter, this is the result of a process called mark-to-market, which means that Celsius holds many tens of millions of the CEL token and is evaluating those as being worth current market price at that time, therefore raising the value of their company. One small problem: liquidity. This is a very important concept for the rest of the video, so I'll be as thorough as possible here. Liquidity is king. You can have $20 billion of any token out there, pick one, doesn't matter, but it won't matter ever unless you have someone to actually sell those tokens to at the current price. If you try to sell them on the open market, right, just directly for what it says to random other people, and you have a lot of them, you will actually drive the price down by yourself. So let's say you have 100 million CEL tokens, but there is an average daily trade volume of 1.6 million tokens. This is fairly accurate, actually, as an overall generalization if you look at the preceding week before these events actually took place. That mismatch presents you with a bit of an issue, because in order to get rid of even just a few million tokens, you would be doubling or tripling the daily volume with exclusively sell pressure, which would crater the price. The result is pretty definitive. If you have a massive number of tokens, any token, that is far beyond the average volume, you legitimately can't sell them for the listed market price. You can sell a tiny fraction for that price, but after that, the sell pressure will crater the market. Your own tokens that are left unsold as you begin to sell decrease in value. And even if you can eventually get rid of all of them, you will never come close to that perfect valuation where somehow, magically, all of your tokens were valued at the current market price. It's asinine. Effectively, Celsius was taking a massive treasury of CEL tokens and pretending it was worth, I don't know, a hefty amount of money, hundreds of millions of dollars at least. But it wasn't. Now, that's bad enough already, but it gets even more complicated when we look at the price action in the very same month these figures were gathered. December of 2021 was a big month for Celsius token, as the price exploded into the $5 range. The price shot up very, very quickly, ending the year at nearly twice the value it had been just 2 weeks prior to that, and that astronomical per token price point is apparently what was used to calculate this mark-to-market treasury value. In simple terms, Celsius has a ridiculous amount of its own CEL token. During the final 2 weeks of their 2020 audit, the price of that token skyrocketed. Because of the increase, according to IntelJackal on Twitter, they were able to pretend that the treasury was worth $1.5 billion, despite the reality that they could never sell those tokens for anything even remotely close to that. And this radically inflated balance sheet was then used over the next year and a half to advance their position in the crypto space as an industry powerhouse. Flash forward, and that same position, if still marked to market price, is worth roughly maybe $43 million, because the CEL token has fallen to roughly 30 cents. And also I'll zero in on 43 million as the speculative figure in just a minute here. But anyway, they still could not even get 40 million for it, 43 million for it, not even close. The same issue of liquidity and sell pressure still exists, but this should hopefully illustrate precisely how non-transparent the company actually is. Now, no one is precisely sure how much money Celsius can legitimately get their hands on. What we see right now is a bank run. Well, they say they're not a bank. What we see right now is, I don't know, they're a fucking bank. It's a bank run. When a bank run happens, you need to find capital, because when you are no longer able to pay your customers what they are asking for in their withdrawals, the music stops and you're basically over. Celsius is apparently trying to do exactly that by pausing the problem and disabling everyone's ability to withdraw anything while they search for liquid capital. However, this gets mind-blowingly complex because Celsius has a host of different positions, some of them liquid, some of them illiquid, and deciphering it has become something of a crowdsourced super project. With that said, we do know about some positions, and those positions are in serious trouble. To understand this, I'll have to use a metaphor. Ethereum, the second largest crypto project in the entire space, is about to undergo a transformation. During that transformation, more specifically right now before it actually happens, people are able to stake their tokens, lose access to them for about a year, and get back a proxy token, STETH, in the process. That proxy token is intended to be a one-to-one representation of their locked Ethereum, but reality is proving to be a tricky thing when compared to idealistic theory. Here's the metaphor. Imagine a bunch of people sitting around a table. In the center is a bowl. The bowl has M&Ms and peanuts in it. One of the people at the table is offering a service. Give them M&Ms, and they give you peanuts, which are equal to your M&Ms, and later you get back all of your original M&Ms plus extra. The bowl in the middle lets you exchange the peanuts, if you want, for M&Ms, because the idea is to avoid having your candy locked up for a full year without you getting to eat any. That bowl, however, has an issue. Inside are 100 M&Ms, for the sake of the example, and 100 peanuts, 100 of each. Sounds good. But you, being the fat ass that you are, have gone ahead and exchanged 300 M&Ms for peanuts with the person sitting across from you, so you have a bit of an issue. Cool, great, right? Maybe you don't have an issue right now, but how are you going to exchange those peanuts? Let's say you get a hankering for some. You need some diabetic sugar. And how are you going to get back the M&Ms? You can exchange 100 of your peanuts right now, sure, but then there are no more M&Ms in the middle bowl. Oh no, what are you going to do? Well, there are a couple of options, but all of them result in you taking a significant loss. You see, you can go to the other fat asses around the table and say, hey man, I have all these peanuts that I can't get rid of and I really need me some M&Ms. Can you help me out a bit? And if you're lucky, some of them will say, yeah, sure, but people are starting to realize that peanuts aren't as good as M&Ms. They don't taste as good. They're not as nice to have. So they say, sure, yeah, but you give me 100 peanuts and you can only have 50 M&Ms in return. The other fat ass is betting that they will eventually get M&Ms back for all the peanuts. So they profit, maybe, theoretically. And you are desperate, so you don't have any other place to go, and you're willing to take a loss and get what little sweet chocolate you can. That's effectively what may be happening to Celsius right now. Fat ass doesn't have enough M&Ms. Staked Ethereum, STETH, is the peanuts. Regular Ethereum is the M&Ms. They need a lot of that. But Celsius is holding a whole bunch of STETH that they really can't get rid of because there is not enough liquidity in that pair in the bowl in the center. That's just the start of their issues. Another problem they have is a massive $500 million loan on a platform called Maker. Now, this one is also rather complex, but simply put, Celsius has this massive loan, and if the price of Bitcoin falls too low, they will be force liquidated. That's $500 million of Bitcoin being market sold, cratering the price even further, and putting Celsius in a terrible position. Far worse than they're in right now. This loan originally had a liquidation threshold of 22,534, meaning if Bitcoin fell below that number, total disaster. But when Bitcoin did fall below that number recently, Celsius began topping up their collateral with more Bitcoin. In essence, they began doubling down. The price, however, kept falling. They put in more money. Liquidation price fell to 20,000. They put in more money. Liquidation price fell to 18,000. And where we stand now, after repeatedly dumping more and more capital in, desperately trying to secure this loan from being liquidated, the price threshold is at 15,000. Here's the trickiest part of all. Why on earth would Celsius be doing this? The reality is that having a loan on MakerDAO requires 150% collateral. If you have $10 as a loan, just as a basic example, you need $15 of collateral. Celsius has a $500 million position, so why would they start throwing money at this if the required collateral is already so high? The only reason I and many others can think of, and it could be different than this, right? You pathetic ass lawyer who hears this from Celsius before you send me some other overnight letter, just listen. Let's use our ears to listen. Celsius has a $500 million position, so why would they start throwing money at this if it's so high already, the required capital? The only reason that I and many others can think of, there might be a different explanation, is that they can't actually repay the entire thing. Imagine this. You have $500 million in a loan with $750 million or thereabouts in collateral. The price is falling though, your collateral is losing value, and you have two choices. Pay back $500 million or increase your collateral by $100 million. Of course, paying the loan, closing the position, getting out of the hole that you have dug for yourself is far more preferable. But if you only have 300 million liquid capital to your name, you can't get out. You would hypothetically be in a terrible situation where you have to top up your collateral on a ridiculously overexposed position because the alternative is catastrophe. To be as charitable as possible, even though they don't deserve it in the slightest, Celsius has incredibly high risk tolerance. As an example, shown in greater depth during my prior videos, they were directly connected to all 6 of the top 6 wallets holding Stakehound Ethereum. Stakehound Ethereum was a brand new way to make extra funny money with your funny money, and yet they lost their keys. Stakehound Ethereum proxy tokens are now effectively worthless and untradeable, thereby losing the top holders when 95% of the tokens track back in some form or another to a Celsius connection, tens of millions of dollars. Having basically zero risk aversion is great when the market just keeps going up. When the market starts coming down, though, it can kill your entire business. Celsius has paused the bank run, a bank run many are speculating they simply cannot afford to pay out, and are desperately trying to find capital. The bank run hasn't dissipated, by the way. If anything, it's only gotten more and more intense, as over 1 million customers, almost 2 million they claim, watch the company panic, holding all of their money hostage, possibly liquidating their own customers. There's gray area with that. Support's overloaded. It's a shit show. What do we expect those customers to do when withdrawals finally open up again? If they ever open up again? Realistically, what do you think they're all going to do? They're going to press the buy more button, they're going to be nice and confident with Celsius, or they're going to click sell. Alex Mashinsky, the company's CEO, was on air less than 2 weeks prior, assuring everyone in open interviews that withdrawals were perfectly safe. He talked a lot of shit about the FUD, a brain-dead term that is now being used to try and discredit all criticism or skepticism. But since they locked everything down and refused to give their customers their money back, he got real fucking quiet, didn't he? As if it were even possible for things to get more strange, they have. In real time, as I made this video, right, writing the script, I put this in after the fact, the price of Cell token shot up by something like 500%. The token spiked massively, only to then crash immediately after. Where it goes next, who the hell knows, because Logic has just left the building. Need more proof of that? Okay. Remember that massive number of Celsius tokens that were housed in their treasury and possibly used to inflate their balance sheet? Yeah. As discovered by crypto forensic analyst Sanji Himura, I'll link his channel down below, he's been working with me on this topic, it's been great, 117 million of them, Celsius tokens, got moved about 6 months ago out of the treasury into this random wallet address. This address has very little activity except the 117 million tokens going in and 25 interactions under the name pulsechain.com. If we look at the text of these transactions, because it's not about the funds, it's about what they sent in text form, there are a series of domain names. And those domain names link to something called PulseX, which is, I don't even know what the fuck to call it. Quote, "The PulseX sacrifice is creating a set of people that believe freedom of movement and assembly are protected human rights. Sacrifice to prove you believe," end quote. PulseX is apparently a way to just sacrifice your money. It reads like a financial cult, like a really bad one more than anything else. And the official Celsius treasury sent over 100 million tokens 6 months ago to an address whose only other transaction history ever was with PulseX. What the actual fuck is going on with this company? To be clear, I make no assertions about what I think is happening here, though I do have a guess. But if anyone wants to investigate any of this for themselves, feel free. I'll put a huge link repository down below in the description. Mashinsky has recently doubled down and tripled down that the FUDsters are paid. Unironically, using the word FUD has now become, at least in my opinion, a blazing tattoo of intellectual delinquency on your forehead. Don't use that word, you sound like a fucking moron. But anyway, I have never once been paid by anyone at all to do Celsius coverage. I have never had holdings in a Celsius competitor. I have never in any capacity whatsoever been subject to a conflict of interest for this topic. And the delusions of this man, this CEO, and his now flailing corporate shitshow are becoming unhinged. There is an entire subset of market whales who hunt liquidation opportunities. The price of Bitcoin dropping too low would margin call Celsius loans, and that cascade failure would give many people an opportunity to buy at a significant discount. Celsius isn't just battling their own community by taking what they have in the platform hostage. They are battling crypto elites and other major institutions who would benefit from their colossally irresponsible business model imploding. Going even deeper, one of their competitors, Nexo, has formally offered to acquire Celsius and its current assets. This could be a move to disrespect them because they have over-leveraged themselves into oblivion, or this could be a result of Celsius customers having their faith in Ponzified economics shaken. These financial schemes, where you get massive amounts of free money, are not secure, sustainable, or real. These are schemes that fall apart. And Celsius freezing all withdrawals, transfers, and swaps will shake the faith of effectively the core demographic being exploited right now by this type of behavior. That affects a lot more than just them, it affects all of crypto. Now, as the speculation runs rampant, some analysts and enthusiasts on Twitter are showcasing that they believe Celsius has begun paying down their loans, which may indicate that they have survived. They cite a nebulous figure named Sam as the one who masterminded this entire situation to begin with, and Sam most likely refers to the crypto billionaire Sam Bankman-Fried, who previously ran Alameda Research and now runs FTX. This matters, perhaps, maybe, because Alameda Research was one of the first fat guys at the table to switch their peanuts to M&Ms. They exchanged ST-ETH for regular ETH, thereby decreasing the liquidity pool, and Alameda Research recently took up a hefty position in Voyager, which is a Celsius competitor. The speculation, to be fair and cover all sides of this, is that Alameda, Sam, and FTX were hunting Celsius, taking advantage of their weak position, but did not anticipate the lending platform going nuclear, locking all their customers out, and using their funds as a weapon to fight back. Even if that's true, they have destroyed faith in their platform on a level that may take on a life of its own, so extreme measures, blah blah blah, extreme outcomes. One thing in all of this has become absolutely certain. Regulation is going to hit this industry like a freight train, and it should. The agencies are coming. This cannot be allowed to continue, where millions of people are losing access to their money as either a bloated, insolvent Frankenstein's monster of a shitty company goes belly up, or massive multi-billion-dollar crypto giants fight each other while trampling the little guys. The government will step in on this. With the bloodbath of crypto over the past few months, that much is certain. To summarize, Celsius Network has locked out their entire customer base. Their money is currently, to put it bluntly, not theirs anymore, and they have done this after wildly overexposing themselves to risk time and time again. That can be the result of self-immolation or being subjected to a coordinated attack by large-scale competitors. I'm not sure, but the result is still the same for average users. You lose access to your money. While who the fuck knows what is happening behind the scenes, enjoy. You get nothing, no information, no security, there's no insurance. It is the epitome of a bad decision to use a non-bank bank that does banking things with none of the insurance and security of a bank. Holy shit. That's it. If they decide to send me another cease and desist or sue me or whatever they're gonna do, whatever the fuck their pathetic little legal team can muster up, have fun, because search and discovery would blow my channel engagement through the stratosphere, and I can easily muster enough resources to make it a pretty harsh dogfight for you. There's more I can cover as the story evolves. Perhaps there will be more that I do cover, but right now, that's it. If you want to support, there are tons of links down below. Best place is Patreon or Locals, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.